For over 4 decades, BMW has ruled the compact sports sedan segment with the 3 Series. Back in 1977, when the very first 3 Series came to America, it was a direct replacement to the famed 02 series of cars, which ended with the beloved 2002 Tii back in 1974. The E21 generation ran from 1977 to 1982, and it was everything that we wanted in a small sports sedan. It was lightweight, it had sharp handling, and it had a rev-happy 4-cylinder paired with a manual transmission. In 1982, BMW followed it up with the E30 body style, which introduced a silky smooth 6-cylinder and the hot rod version tuned by BMW's M division. The E36 was launched in 1992, and it grew in size and added more power, but it continued to preserve that special sauce that the 3 Series became known for. While the generation that I remembered best came in 1999, when the benchmark-setting E46 generation was launched. It offered quite possibly the best steering feel to ever grace a 4-door sedan, while the fire-breathing M3 models could keep pace with a lot of sports cars of its time. In 2006, BMW introduced the E90 generation and really upped the power with up to 320 horsepower in the turbocharged 335 IS models and a high-revving V8 with over 400 horsepower in the M3. Unfortunately, when you sit at the top for so long, sooner or later, you're going to get knocked off your perch, and the 3 Series was punched right in its kidneys back in 2011 when the unloved F30 body style came out. Its newly electric power steering offered no actual feedback, its 2-liter turbo gas engine sounded like a diesel, and the overall handling dynamics just felt like BMW forgot that they built the ultimate driving machines. So to reclaim their spot in the hierarchy, I'm standing by the next generation G20 330i. It's the 7th generation of this iconic sports sedan, and with such big shoes to fill, I brought the perfect competitor to pit it up against, the all-electric Tesla Model 3. Now in the modern day era of sports sedans, the question that I want answered, which one of these 3s actually deserves to wear the crown, Tesla or BMW? Stay tuned to find out. So when you look at the size comparison of these 2 sedans on paper, you would think that they were direct competitors because both cars are roughly the same size at around 185 inches long. However, one is an all-electric sedan, while the other one is powered by dead dinosaurs. Now, the one thing about the 3 Series in this all-new generation, its design has always been kind of evolutionary, and for this new generation, you can tell it's still a 3 Series in the front. However, the kidneys of the front have really become nostrils because they've gotten really large, especially when you look at the X7 with its Winifred Sanders front fascia. This particular 3 Series actually has active grille shutters. Right now they are closed, but when the engine gets hot, it'll actually open up to allow more airflow to cool off the engine. And the radiator, of course, for aerodynamics, it's going to shut. The BMW does have their laser light headlight technology. These are included with the executive package. It technically one-ups the Tesla because these are just full LEDs, while these are an LED laser light headlight, which are supposedly shine much brighter further down the road when you guys are driving at night. Both cars actually have fog lights. This particular one here has the M Sport package, so you can see it has a little bit more of an aggressive front fascia. In contrast, the Tesla has nothing really at the front that shows it off as a more aggressive model. In fact, it doesn't even have a grille. Instead, there's a small opening over here, and you have a very flush look to the headlights, to the actual front bumper. This one here is actually the performance model, so technically I wish it had a more aggressive front end. This is going to compare more favorably with a BMW M3, which technically isn't out yet, although the performance version of the Model 3 doesn't look any different from the other Model 3s, which I think is kind of a problem, especially when you look at design for sports sedans. Now around the sides, these 2 sedans are actually pretty much the same length. The BMW has a wheelbase that's about an inch shorter, but still at 112 inches long. The wheelbase of the BMW is actually a couple inches longer than the old E39 5 Series and the first generation BMW 7 Series. So this thing has gotten pretty big. The Tesla has a wheelbase that's 113 inches long, so it's an inch longer, but the BMW is actually an inch longer in the overall length versus the Tesla. Now the wheel sizes, the Beamer comes with these 19-inch wheels, and because it has the track handling package, you have these upgraded M-specific sport brakes with the blue painted calipers. They look great. The rotor size is actually quite identical to this Model 3, which is the performance model, which comes with 20-inch wheels with the red painted calipers. Keep in mind, if you guys don't get the performance, you're gonna have a slightly smaller 19 or 18-inch wheel with a more conventional brake setup. Now at the back of these cars, they couldn't look any more different, and I have to give it to the BMW for looking more aggressive. However, it doesn't really look like like a BMW anymore. It looks more like a Lexus with those inverted Ls. Both of these cars have full LED taillights. The Tesla has a very clean rear end as there's very little badging. The BMW only has the 335i badge. The one thing that I like about the Beamer are the symmetrical dual exhaust tips, which are perfectly mounted underneath the rear bumper. Of course, the Tesla being electric, it doesn't actually have exhaust tips. Now, when you open up the trunk of these two cars, the Beamer technically has the bigger trunk at 17 cubic feet of space. However, the Tesla's 15 cubic foot trunk also is augmented by a front trunk, and you also have storage underneath the floor, which the Beamer doesn't have. Both of these cars also have fold-down rear seats to expand out the cargo capacity. So before I get into the interior of these two sports sedans, let me first talk about the key fob, because let's face it, keys, they're becoming yesterday's news. I mean, manufacturers are probably going to get rid of keys down the road. BMW still offers a key. This is the traditional intelligent access comfort key that you'll get when you guys opt for the executive package that this particular one has. Now, the one thing that BMW has added, they've added a feature where if I walk up to the car with the key fob on me, the car's locked right now. It actually unlocked the door because it sensed that I was approaching. I didn't even have to touch the door handle. Now, another thing that this car also offers is a walk-away lock feature. So if I didn't open the door and I just walk away with the key fob in my pocket, the car will automatically relock. Now, of course, Tesla offers the same thing on the Model 3. However, the Model 3 didn't actually launch with an actual hard key. You can get it now. Instead, your phone is the key, or you have that digital key card. Now, the difference with the Tesla is when you approach the Model 3, it doesn't actually unlock the door. It's locked right now because the mirrors are shut. The BMW, as you saw, unlocked the door. The Tesla, I actually have to open the door first, which I actually think is the better design. Keep in mind, with the Beamer, you can turn off the automatic unlock feature, because I did find it annoying, especially if I was just approaching the car, but not necessarily wanting to get into the car. So of course, Teslas are very much known for their gimmicks. This is their summon feature, which Elon Musk says will have the ability to actually come to you in a parking lot someday. For now, it can only move about 3 or 4 feet in one direction, which is pretty cool if I basically sit here with my phone and just have the car pull forward for me. Let's see how far I can actually get it to pull forward for me. And it's got sensors and cameras everywhere to keep this thing from hitting you. So if I stood here, oh, you see that? It didn't run me over. Thank you, car. Thank you, Elon Musk. Yeah, that sounds relatively solid. Okay, that sounds a little tinny and hollow. So when you step inside the interior of this all-new G20 330i, you can see it is actually very different versus the previous F30 body styles, and very different versus the previous E90 and E46 generation. BMW has thrown in a lot of tech into this car. The first thing you're going to notice, it has wireless Apple CarPlay, which BMW used to charge you extra for. This wireless CarPlay is included when you guys get the premium package. I actually think it looks great. I love how I don't have to connect my phone with any stupid wires and whatnot, but I will say that it didn't always work every time. There were times where I was driving the car, it would disconnect from my phone and then randomly reconnect. So again, technology isn't always great. The instrument panel, BMW offers a digital cockpit, a live cockpit professional display. It's a 12-inch display. However, if you guys have seen a lot of the Audis with the virtual cockpit display, which they've been offering for like 3 or 4 years now, this is very basic. It's almost like BMW was like, okay, we put a digital display, we're gonna throw it out. It is a huge change versus the traditional analog gauges that BMW has been doing for years, but I don't really particularly love the way the tack needle spins in a counterclockwise direction. The head-up display is something that I wish the Tesla offered, because it is a great head-up display. Elon Musk, if you guys remember, really just hates head-up displays. Now, in terms of gadgets and gizmos, the BMW does offer quite a few features that would wow some passengers. It has their signature gesture control, which means if I want to turn the volume up, I can just do that with my finger. I can also mute the sound by doing that, or unmute it again by doing that. So the gesture control is a little silly, but it's included when you guys get the iDrive 7.0. So the other gadget that they offer is their new personal assistant. Just like Mercedes-Benz, if you say something like, "Hey BMW," and you can see it doesn't always work. "Hey BMW."
Hello, what can I help you with?
"I'm tired."
This function is currently not available.
Really? She usually found me a hotel whenever I did that, so that's strange. Let me try this again. "Hey BMW, it's cold."
What temperature should I set?
65 degrees.
I'm setting the temperature on the driver's side to 65 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, so this personal assistant thing is cool. However, it can be frustrating because there were plenty of times where I was just driving along and thinking, oh wow, this BMW really needs to do this, and the stupid bitch would come up on the screen. Although when I wanted her to come up on the screen, like when I said, hey BMW, she's not coming up on the screen. So it's a little inconsistent. The gadgets and the gizmos in this car, you know, sometimes I would take them or leave them. Now, in terms of the quality here, because that's always a comparison that people like to talk about, especially when you're comparing it to a Tesla. Now, this BMW's interior looks very expensive and luxurious at a glance. Now, the one thing about it, it has a warm feeling, especially when you have this cognac leather. This leather is actually $1,700 extra, which it does look nice, but I will say the leather doesn't feel all that supple. I've sat in some Mazdas with their Napa leather, and they feel a lot softer than this. The seats are only heated. BMW does not offer a cooled seat, at least on this model. This one's fully loaded. I'm surprised there's no cooled seats. There's kind of like a three-dimensional textured aluminum trim, which looks and feels a little bit strange. If you guys want, you can replace this with wood for no charge as well. The shifter, you can see BMW has done away with that big joystick shifter. Instead, you have this little stubby knob where you basically kick back, push the unlock screen. You can see, put it into reverse here. Mine has a 360 camera that's part of the executive package. It also has their automatic parallel parking and backup assistance, which technically remembers the way that you backed in or pulled into a parking spot, a tight parking spot, and all you have to do is just push that and it'll automatically back up in the same direction you came in. It's a really interesting gimmick that I haven't had a chance to try, but I'll believe them when they tell me that. Now, in terms of the build quality and the materials in here, this one being the M Sport package has the Sensatec dashboard, which honestly, the Sensatec is a fake leather that feels and looks fake. I'm not really impressed with how hollow the dash sounds. There's some cheap plastic speaker covers here that are covering the center of the speaker here. And then some of the plastics here feel a little bit cheap, especially when you consider the fact that this car costs $60,000. Now, of course, there are some highlights. The seats are far more aggressive than the Teslas. They have an adjustable thigh extension. They do hug you in place nicely. And overall, I like the steering wheel in this car. It's a fat, thick rimmed wheel with paddle shifters. It's a heated wheel. It's tilt and telescoping, but however, at $60,000, it should be a power tilt and telescoping. But above me, this particular one has a premium package, so it includes kind of like this half-ass size panoramic sunroof, which does let in a good amount of light. And then, of course, the interior here has this really beautiful ambient lighting, which you can change colors. I think BMW offers like 7 different colors. I have it on the lilac color. And then over here you can see the glove box. It's pretty small, but it is damped and lined with felt. Now, because BMW stretched the wheelbase of this generation by 2 inches, they did add some more space in the back seat. You're looking at around 36 inches of legroom. There is a fairly large hump that intrudes on the middle passenger, which Tesla doesn't have, of course, in the Model 3. There are rear seat vents. There's your own set of climate controls, and BMW threw in some USB-C outlets. And then there's also a fold-down center armrest to give you rear seat passengers a little bit more space. But this interior is nice. Let's hop into the Tesla and compare it versus the BMW. No! Ah, there's a lot of bees! Oh, sorry guys. So as you can see, the Tesla's interior is far different from the BMW's in the sense that I was just playing a frickin' video game in the car and I was using the steering wheel and the pedals to actually control the game, which you probably look like an idiot because the wheels on the outside of the car are actually turning. But the Tesla's interior seriously makes me think this is a car built and designed for millennials, because as opposed to the BMW, it's very simplistic in here. You have this giant 15-inch tablet basically in the center that looks like a MacBook Pro. You have a basically one vent, a continuous vent that goes the entire length of the dashboard, where if you want to change the airflow, you have to go to the screen over here. There's basically no buttons and knobs in this car. There's like maybe a few hard buttons. There's 2 scrolly buttons on the wheel. There's a button here for the hazards, and then you have your window switches. So Tesla went with a very simplistic route. Some of you may not like that. You're going to think this is like a lazy effort on their part, but I have to say the inside of the Model 3 feels incredibly roomy and open and airy compared to the BMW, because you have this very low dashboard, you have this really short hood as opposed to the long hood of the Beamer, and really it's just a matter of tech and simplicity. I appreciate that for what the Tesla offers. Now, of course, everything is controlled on this screen. I'm not going to go too much in depth with this. Basically, Tesla offers a lot of gadgets and gimmicks in this car. Of course, there's the arcade mode here, or if you go there, you can play all of these different games on the car. Now, keep in mind, when I bought this car, it didn't actually have all these games. Elon Musk had sent out an update, and it just basically added all these games, and it had some features. Go back over here to the Tesla T emblem. You can see there's this really amazing emission testing mode where you can basically play some practical fart jokes on your passengers in this car if you guys want to have a good laugh. I mean, you have to admire Elon Musk for his sense of humor. If you also go back to the gadgets modes here, you can see there's a little sketch pad where you can draw a couple of things on here. I'm not going to draw anything phallic since I did that in my last video. There is a part where you can go on Mars, you can activate the Santa mode, and in this mode here, the romance mode, where it plays this beautiful, almost 4K like fireplace, and it actually starts playing music in here to get you in the mood. I mean, hey, if self-driving cars are coming, which is something that Tesla likes to advertise, I imagine a lot of people are going to be doing some stuff they shouldn't be doing when they're actually behind the wheel. Now, a couple of things that the Tesla is lacking: there are no cooled seats or heated steering wheel. It's not available on the Model 3. This huge panoramic Vista roof is standard on every Model 3, but doesn't actually open. I kind of wish it did open. I wish that Tesla would just offer that feature. The wireless charger that I have on this particular one, I added, it was $130. It was an aftermarket accessory. Tesla now offers it from the factory. It's still a dealer accessory for like 150 bucks. It's nice because it basically allows you to, you know, take your phone and just put it right here. It plugs into the two USB ports that are over there. I mean, you have two cup holders over here. The steering wheel, the one thing about that, if you want to adjust everything, unlike the BMW, which has all those buttons and knobs, the Tesla, you kind of have to do it all from the screen. But at least they include a power tilt telescoping steering wheel, which has the ability to memorize your steering wheel, your mirror settings, your seat controls. So in the $60,000 BMW, the fact that they included it in the Tesla, I mean, you kind of have to give them that, give them that for having more features. Now, the Tesla's interior quality and build quality in this car, of course, that's a subject of controversy. Now, I've actually had this car for a year. It has almost 11,000 miles on it, and I have to say, I don't really hear any squeaks and rattles. There is a good amount of road noise, which I'll talk about when we go into the drive. Everything in here, for the most part, fits okay. I mean, the materials on the dash, they are soft touch injection molded plastic, but they do feel cheap, especially compared to the BMW. It's also soft touch on the door panels. I love the white interior, which, as you can see, this white interior, the seats in this car are more comfortable than the Beamers. They just don't hold you in place quite as well, but they almost feel like you're sitting on a cloud. So I could kind of give this car a pass, because on road trips, I would rather take this car. In terms of, everything else with the quality in here, I like the white material that you get with this particular white interior upgrade. If you want to open up the glove box, you can see it's bigger than the Beamers, and you have a felt-lined glove box, a good amount of storage, but you have to open up through the screen. But if you go into the back seat of the Model 3, this is where the Tesla actually has the Beamer beat, because the floor is basically completely flat back here, and because it doesn't have a rear drive shaft, you just get overall lower floor, which Tesla says you have around 36 inches of legroom back here. You also have rear seat vents. You have two USB ports over there. Now, there's no buttons or controls back here. Instead, if you wanted to, let's say, for example, turn on the heated rear seats back there, you have to go into the actual screen here and go there, and you can see you can turn on each individual heated rear seats, which the BMW offered. However, the Beamer did not offer a heated center seat, which is definitely a unique feature. I've never seen that really in any other car. Only Tesla does that. Overall, the inside of the Model 3, some of you may hate the overall simplicity, how you have to control everything through the touchscreen, but I will say, if you own this car, if you just spend a few days with it, it becomes really intuitive, it becomes second nature, and some of you may actually prefer this car's interior because it's just so different. Now, since the BMW has laser headlights, and I've never driven anything with laser headlights, I figured it would be better to do this in drive at night so I can show you guys the laser headlights. And by the way, LED headlights are finally standard. These laser lights are optional. They're part of the executive package. Now, the interior of this car definitely looks a lot better at night from where I'm sitting, because you can do something like change the interior color here to green, to lilac, to blue, white, orange, bronze. I particularly like the lilac color. You can also change the accent lighting. Let me turn off the light here so you can see. It looks pretty cool, honestly, with the light piping that goes across the dash, across the door panels. It's got lighting in the actual footwell, which is pretty cool. So that's a really upscale touch that a lot of brands are starting to offer, honestly. but it's not necessarily with the same amount of customization and kind of detail, attention to detail that you get with these luxury brands. Now the LED laser headlights, you can definitely see they extend pretty far. I'm struggling though to see if they are that much better versus the LEDs you get in a lot of other modern cars. This car also has automatic high beams, they swivel. I think the laser headlights are kind of gimmicky, but they have been detuned, dumbed down for the US because we don't technically allow the full laser headlights, which manufacturers say is what's really going to be delivering a much improved light as it shines down the road basically at night. Now, this particular one that I'm driving, remember, is the base 3 Series. It's got a 2-liter B5830 4-cylinder, turbocharged 4-cylinder with their double Vanos, variable valve timing, direct injection, 255 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque, rear drive going out through an 8-speed automatic only transmission. That's right, this is the first BMW 3 Series without a stick shift, so that's kind of not really onto a good start here with enthusiasts for this car, but it does get excellent gas mileage, 26 in the city, 36 on the highway, and this car weighs about 3,600 pounds. Now, I have it in its sport individual mode. Let's test the throttle response here. I mean, it's quick. This thing, honestly, for a base motor, will get out of its own way very nicely. And honestly, a lot of people are going to be super shocked when they drive this thing. Because remember, the previous F30 body style offered a 320i with like 180 horsepower, which was lethargic. You were getting smoked by Camrys and Subaru BRZs in that base motor. So it's a good thing that BMW killed off that 320i model. I'm hoping they don't bring it back because this honestly has enough pep and power for most of the competition. It competes head-on with a base Tesla Model 3 standard range. It's quicker than a Mercedes-Benz C300, about as fast as the Audi A4 with its dual clutch transmission. Now, the steering feel also was horrible in the previous generation car, and you can see BMW has improved it on this new one. It definitely is quicker to respond whenever you turn the wheel forward and back. The feel also is somewhat better. I mean, it's interesting because BMW had the best steering for so long in the segment, hydraulic steering, and when they went to electric, it's almost like they forgot what good steering actually felt like. And other brands do better electric power steering. Mazda does better, Porsche does better, Mercedes did better. I mean, there's just so many other brands. Cadillacs do better with electric power steering. So BMW honestly needed to figure it out, and they have addressed it. I just don't know if it's still the best in the segment. I mean, you've got the Genesis G70, which is excellent. You've got the Alfa Romeo Giulia, which is excellent. The Tesla Model 3, which is actually excellent. So it surprises me that BMW didn't make that more of a priority. The magic sauce that I got like in the Giulia is still kind of missing in this car. It doesn't have quite the eager dynamic feel that Alpha definitely gives you. But cruising down the road here, let me switch it over to comfort here. The ride quality of this car actually surprises me. It is firm. I didn't expect it to be this firm. I mean, the 19-inch wheels don't help. It's got run flat tires. Remember, this car has the track handling package, so it's got the limited slip diff. You know, I just expected it to be softer, so make sure you guys try out the non-M Sport models because this is a tad too firm. Even when it's in its comfort setting, the adaptive dampers are supposedly in its softer setting, but I just find that they're still a little bit too harsh for my taste. Going back into sport mode here, the engine definitely has gotten rid of that diesel-like clatter at low revs. It just doesn't really have the same kind of noise that I would like. I mean, in sport mode, BMW is amplifying the noise here, which I'm not entirely sure I like the noise. I mean, it's a nice, meaty, deep growl. And it has a little burble from the exhaust as well. The transmission, though, I have no complaints. It's the ZF 8-speed, wonderful dance partner with this engine. So if you have to get rid of the manual, which I know, sad day about the manual, this is the transmission that you would be okay to deal with on a daily basis because it's smooth, it shifts well, it has responsive paddles. You know, when you have it in its sport mode, it's eager to, you know, downshift a couple of gears, and it's also quick to upshift. So no complaints with the transmission. Most people are going to be plenty happy with the base model of this car. Now remember, this has the track handling package and the sport suspension and the sport brakes, and surprisingly, this thing has a chassis that could easily handle a lot more power. I am eagerly excited for the M model because it feels good. I just don't know if it stands out in the way that the old BMWs used to. A lot of them actually feel really good nowadays, so. Now BMW says this car will get to 60 in about 5.4 seconds. I would time it at around the same. The all-wheel drive model is actually surprisingly a little bit quicker than this. So if you guys are looking for more speed, go for the all-wheel drive model. If you want something that's around 4 seconds, go for the M340i model, which has another 130 horsepower. I'm imagining the M3, the next gen, needs to be in the low 3-second range. And if they include it with all-wheel drive, I drove that engine in the X3M, which will do it in like 3.8 seconds. I wouldn't be surprised if they meet that target, which is good because BMW needed to up the power, they needed to up the performance in order to keep up with the Tesla Model 3. But other than that, in terms of the driver assistance tech, this car has the upgraded Driver Assistance Pro package. Basically what that means, I push this button here to activate. It's an assisted drive mode. The car will actually keep in the lanes for me. It's got a camera that watches my face to make sure that I'm paying attention to the road. It yells at me when I don't have my hands on the wheel. And let's see if it follows this curve over here. It does a pretty good job at following the curve. But I will say that if you're looking to do a lane change, it doesn't change lanes for you like the way that the Tesla does. So surprised that BMW didn't include that. Mercedes was the only other brand that I saw did include that. So I think it's something that other brands need to include. But look at those headlights. The automatic high beams came on. Those throw a lot of light out there on the road. But again, I just don't know if it's a lot brighter than what you get in the Tesla or any other vehicle with LED headlights. But it is nice. I like the adaptive nature of the headlights. They curve and they swivel in a very relaxed, fluid manner to show that you spent extra money for your BMW. But other than that, it's a pleasant driving car. Fast enough for most people. Can't wait to drive the M340. Can't wait to drive the M3. But let's hop into the Tesla Model 3 and see how that compares. So I figured since I did the BMW drive at night, let's do the same thing in the Tesla just to keep for the consistency's sakes. And I can also test out the headlights in this car because these are just standard LEDs. Now they're LED low and high beams, and you also get LED fog lights. And you can see here from the driver's seat, the Tesla's LEDs honestly are one of the brightest that I've ever driven. I don't really see any visual differences between this LED and the LED lasers that you get in the BMW. Now granted, the Model 3 doesn't have all of that fancy interior lighting stuff in here. There's really very little accent lighting. There's some accent lighting in the footwells, but you can't change the color. You can turn them on and off, but Tesla doesn't offer that customization with the colors, which I think they should consider offering that. I mean, it would be nice because the interior here just has a lot of flat spots. They could easily just put an LED strip that runs along behind the aluminum trim, which honestly would be not that expensive for them to add. Now, basically the centerpiece, this massive screen. Let me turn off the dome lights in here so you can see what it looks like. Lights. And again, this would be better if they just did a frickin' button instead of having to go through this screen here. But once you get used to where the buttons are, you'll start to remember it. But as you can see here, all of the light comes from the screen. You can really see what the headlights, or how much light they're throwing out when you have them off. They don't swivel like they do in the BMW, which really surprised me. But the Tesla's driving experience in this car, it is so otherworldly. It is just so different, and it's going to really throw you off when you first get into this car because, you know, it's all electric, so it's so quiet. There's no engine noise, but you do hear a little bit more of the road noise. I actually hear some whirring noises coming from the electric motor and from the actual, like, the wheel bearings or something. It's kind of like a little bit of a whirring noise that you kind of have to get used to. Now, in terms of wind and road noise, I feel that it's higher in this car versus the BMW simply because there's no engine noise that's masking everything else. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. The ride quality in the Tesla, surprisingly, is better. It has a softer ride that's also augmented by these really supportive seats that feel like I'm sitting on a cloud. For 20-inch wheels on this performance model, it rides very, very well for something that, you know, is designed to be a lot more sporty. Visibility in this car is also worlds better because the hood is so incredibly short. You can see out of everything, or see over it very well. The view out of the back, however, the BMW is better in that sense because the high rear deck that this car gives you, you can't really see much out of the back of this car. The steering in the Model 3, I wasn't expecting this to be better than the BMW's, but it is. I mean, it is even quicker ratio. It offers a little bit more feedback. It's not Alfa Romeo Giulia good, not quite as good as the G70 either, the last one that I drove, but it is surprising how good this interior is. Now, I'm going to try to refrain about talking about the acceleration because this is not a fair apples to apples acceleration comparison, because I have the performance model, which will do 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. But I will demonstrate the difference in a car that doesn't have a transmission, doesn't have to wait for any turbos to spool up, any gasoline to burn. Basically, let's say you slow down to this speed and you're trying to pass somebody on the highway. People usually think electric cars have no power, but watch this. It's just, it'll startle you, it'll startle your passengers, it'll startle people on the road, because this car, as you saw, launches very, very hard. And even if you don't pony up for the performance model, the dual motor non-performance will still do 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. So it'll smoke the Beamer. You have to get an M340i to compete with that, which is going to cost you more than the Tesla. So keep that in mind. The Beamer is more expensive than this car, and you have to put gas in it and pay for more and more maintenance. Now, the autopilot in Teslas is also something that is usually one of the best in the industry. Just double tap this down, set your cruise speeds. You can see that screen shows you everything you'd like to know about what's around you, and it gives you a little bit more confidence to drive this car, which is definitely good. You can see it follows the lanes just like it did in the BMW. If I signal left, however, it will change lanes for me automatically, and then it'll turn off the turn signal once it's finished changing lanes. And again, signal right, it checks to see if there's a car there and then switches its little butt over to the next lane. Mercedes offers a system like this, but I found that it works the best in the Tesla. I'm trying to not sound as fanboyish as I can about this, but facts are facts. Tesla has the balls to deliver a self-driving system that isn't quite level 3, but it's damn well close. And the other German brands, they really need to take notice. Now you can see the automatic high beams, they will also come on, and they don't have that nice little waft where it slowly turns on the auto high beams. They're also not very good at picking up other cars. Like I felt bad because I was kind of blinding the people in front of me, but again, that was the auto high beams, not necessarily me driving or choosing when to turn them on and to turn them off. So coming onto the same on-ramp here, the Tesla definitely sits higher than the BMW, but the steering offers a lot of feedback. The tires, these are the Michelin Pilot Super Sports. This car just handles exceptionally well, way better than the Model S, and it's on par with every other sports sedan in this segment. And the best thing about this car is whenever you come to a stop, I'll just do one acceleration run for fun. Oh, my neck. Ooh. Again, we're not going to compare the acceleration times because this competes with an M3, but most of the other Tesla models, you're going to drive them and they're going to be, insane acceleration, no lag whatsoever. It's one of the reasons why you bought an electric car. So really, the overall driving experience of this car, it's so hard to find faults with it. I mean, sure, there's no engine noise. I miss the engine noise, but you have such instantaneous, crazy speed that you're just not really necessarily missing the engine noise quite as much, because Tesla gives you something else in return. I mean, you can play video games on this thing, you can turn on the Rainbow Road with the more cowbell, you can turn it into a Santa mode, it has then crazy enhanced autopilot stuff, the full self-driving is coming, it has that summon feature where their enhanced summon is coming and whatnot. The seats are really comfortable, so there is something about this car. It refreshes your mind. It makes you think twice about what you expect a modern car to drive a certain way. It reprograms your mind. It makes driving new and fun again, and I think that's the secret sauce that the BMW is missing. That secret sauce is something that BMW engineers should have worked really hard to bring back into the 3 Series. I'm just not sure they have. I think that I'm hopeful for the next generation M3, but there may very well be a new 3 as the top dog in the sports sedan segment. So I have to admit, I feel really sorry for BMW engineers, because redesigning an icon like the 3 Series, that's never going to be an easy proposition. I mean, when you have such iconic models like the E21, the E30, the E36, the E46, the E90, the F10, or the F30, and then of course finally the G20, redesigning this car really left some big shoes to fill, and unfortunately I'm not entirely sure BMW was able to fill those shoes completely, because what they did here is they took a lot of the elements of the old F30 body style and they're trying to rectify the faults with that car. But in the process, I think BMW forgot about the secret sauce that made the 3 Series so special in the first place. The desirability factor of this car is just simply gone, and it's gone to this car, the Tesla Model 3. And the numbers don't lie. The sales figures of the Tesla are double that of the BMW. Last year, in 2018, Tesla moved over 150,000 Model 3s here in America. In contrast, BMW only did about 75,000 3 Series here in the States. BMW used to do over 140,000 of these back in 2014. So really the fact of the matter is people have been going to buy this instead of this, and you're going to find plenty of the Model 3s out there on the roads as opposed to this new 3 Series, which was kind of invisible during my week's worth of testing this car. And overall, when you look at the price of these vehicles, they're pretty much neck and neck. Both of these cars start at around $40,000. They're going to go up from there. Of course, this one here, I can't really compare that one favorably because it's the performance version. This is going to compare with a Model 3 or with a BMW M3, which isn't out yet. As tested, I paid about 80 grand for this. You can buy this exact car today for about $69,000 because Tesla has reduced the price. This one here started around $41,000. Add the premium package, add the executive package, the $5,000 M Sport package, the upgraded wheels, the upgraded leather, the color. This one stickers for just over $60,000 on a base level 3 Series, which, to be honest, you could get a base level Model 3 for about $10,000 less. I would easily still pick the Tesla because this is a car that feels truly modern. It really rewrites the book on what you think a performance sports sedan should drive. Even though some of you may argue, this is just a computer on wheels, this is also a computer on wheels. Both of these cars have gimmicks, and some of them don't work every time when you're trying to demonstrate them. And to be honest, the BMW kind of feels like they're holding on to the past. When I spoke with some BMW engineers at the recent press program, I noticed that they are really against electric cars. The Germans in general didn't think that they would catch on. And to be honest, I think they were wrong in that, and they're realizing that because they're trying to play catch up. They are working on an all-electric version of the 3 Series to be called the i4. But by the time it comes out in 2021, I fear it might be too late because Tesla has really had the market cornered since 2012. There is no other luxury brand that offers an electric car with over 300 miles of range. I mean, sure, we've got the coming EQC from Mercedes, the Audi e-tron, but those only offer about 210 miles of range, whereas the Tesla has 100 more. So that's really something to be said about Tesla. And even though there are some haters, some of the owners of the Tesla brand are crazy, you have to admit that Tesla got that secret sauce right. And with all that said, this is probably why I'm going to crown the 3 as the best of the sports sedan segment, the modern sports sedan segment. It deserves to wear the crown in both sales and in the innovation market. So now that I've gotten to the end of this video, it's time to give both of these cars a score on our RPM rating scale, starting with the R in Redline for real world usage. Now, both of these cars are sedans. They're not SUVs, they're not trucks, so I can't give them the highest possible score, but I will give the Tesla a little bit of a higher score because it has more interior space, it has more trunk space, and that's gonna really add a bunch of points in the real world when you live with this thing. So I'm gonna give the Tesla a 7 out of 10 points. I'm gonna give the Beamer about 6 out of 10 points, just one less than the Tesla. Now, going to the E in Redline for efficiency, this BMW actually gets excellent gas mileage for what it is. I mean, 255 horsepower, 0 to 60 in the mid 5s. I got about 28 miles to the gallon in mixed driving. BMW rates this thing at 26 in the city, 36 on the highway, which honestly, those numbers are fantastic. That's basically what you're gonna get in like a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic. The Tesla, of course, it's electric, so you can't really compare the two directly, but I will say in my year's worth of ownership, I've had this car consistently gives you about 250, 260 miles of real world range on the highway. I've pushed this up to give me about 270 miles on a full charge. And then of course you can recharge it with all of Tesla's superchargers. I'm gonna give the Tesla a little bit of a better rating here on efficiency. I'll give it a 7 out of 10, and I'll give the Beamer also a 6 out of 10. Now, going on to the D for desirability in Redline. Obviously, the Tesla, I think, is the more desirable choice. This BMW was just kind of invisible driving it around DC. A lot of people really didn't notice this is the new 3 Series, while this car, I have to say, there's a lot of Tesla Model 3s out there now, but I'm gonna give this car a 7 out of 10 on the desirability scale. I'm gonna give this car a 5 out of 10 just because it doesn't really feel like an all new car. So moving on, let's talk about the L for longevity in Redline, because obviously with reliability and how long these cars are gonna last, BMW hasn't had the best reputation for reliability, but when you buy a BMW, they give you free maintenance for 3 years, and you also get like a 4-year, 50,000 mile comprehensive. You technically get the same thing with the Tesla. However, this car has far less moving parts. So in terms of maintenance, you're gonna have to do less, but you don't technically have to pay for maintenance on the BMW. I'm gonna give both of these cars a 6 out of 10 points, simply because they offer their own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to longevity. And they both honestly are built pretty much the same, although maybe the Beamer has a little bit better build quality, but the interior materials in this car isn't quite as expensive as I'd like it to be. Moving on to the I in Redline, let's talk about the innovation factor here. And this is obviously where the Tesla is going to win, because the BMW kind of feels like it's hanging on to the past, while the Tesla is something that powers on to a new future. This is the future of motoring, because electric cars, unfortunately, are the future, whether you like it or not. I'm gonna give the Tesla a 9 out of 10. I'm gonna give the Beamer about a 6 out of 10 points. Moving on to the N in Redline, need for speed. Obviously, this is going to be the faster car because it's the performance model, so I can't do a direct comparison. But in general, the Tesla Model 3 is faster because this is electric. It's got that instant torque where this just takes off the line really fast. The Beamer, on the other hand, is rear drive. You can do a burnout with it. It's still relatively fast, but it also feels like an older way of driving. I'm gonna give the Tesla a 9 out of 10 for need of speed. I'm gonna give the BMW a 7 out of 10 because it's still fast. It's just slow when you drive an electric car. And last but not least, let's talk about the final E in Redline for expense. I did call it evaluation, but I figured expense was a better word. Both of these cars started around $40,000. However, when you start packing on the options for the Beamer, this car actually gets more expensive than the Tesla, and you have to fill this thing up with dead dinosaurs, whereas the Tesla, it's much cheaper to recharge. You don't have to pay any gas for it, and there's far less maintenance because it has less moving parts. You could basically buy a Tesla for about $5,000 to $10,000 less than a comparable BMW, and this car, because it's much more desirable, much more innovative, I'll easily give this car an 8 out of 10 points, while the Beamer, I'll have to give this more a 5 out of 10 points because I just don't think there's much value built into the 3 Series. Now, out of the scores of our RPM rating, you can clearly see that it skews in favor of the Tesla, which solidifies my choice as the winner of this comparison test. It's the car that deserves to wear the crown. It's the 3 that deserves to wear the crown in the compact sports sedan segment. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full comparison between the all-new G20 BMW 3 Series and this Tesla Model 3. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.